Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another episode of Angie's Tangents. I'm really happy that last week people seemed to really resonate and enjoy the E-class video. And honestly, that's all I've ever hoped for. And I hope that today's video, which also sits very near and dear to my heart, also resonates and connects with the people that need it most in the same way. And today's episode is something that has been marinating in my mind for quite a while. And that is the pressure to be great. So let's get started. So I don't know if this specifically is an Indonesian thing. I don't think it is. But I grew up hearing this sentence a lot and it's from my parents. And that sentence is, kamu harus lebih hebat dari mami dan papi. And that basically means in English, you have to be greater than us. I don't think it was ever said with bad intention. Because if anything, I feel like it came from love. It comes from the fact that, you know, they want me to have a better life, to go further, to achieve more. And I think a part of me always believed that too. Like, I want to be great for the people around me, whether that be my parents, my friends, or even just myself in general. But I don't think we really talk about the other side of that expectation. And I don't think I realize how deeply this affected me when I was younger. Because as a child, it felt normal and it wasn't really something I questioned and just something that I took at face value. It ultimately just became the standard. And when you grow up in a culture like mine, you don't really ever question adults because there's a sense of respect that comes with it. And sometimes questioning, not even in a specific way, can come off as rude. So I kind of just took it at face value and accepted that their standard just eventually became mine. Because when you're constantly told to be greater, there's an unspoken fear that comes with it. Thoughts like, what if I'm not? Or what if I disappoint them? Or what if I try my best and it's still average? And I think that's the part that sits quietly in the background. The fear of being mediocre. And not even in a super dramatic way, just in a very human way. Like, what if I don't become someone remarkable? And I think what makes it harder is that remarkable is never clearly defined. It just becomes this moving target. So no matter what you achieve, there's always this quiet question of, is it enough? And it was only very recently that I started to question that narrative, you know? What even is mediocre? Compared to who? And compared to what timeline? I think a big part of why I feel this so strongly is because of my grandparents. I may be a bit biased, but they genuinely are the most inspiring people in my life. So, for example, my kakung, who is my grandpa from my mom's side, he was a colonel in the Indonesian military, and he actually left the TNI in the 80s. And, you know, colonel is already a pretty high-ranking position, but the fact that he left in the 80s, it's not a small thing. And the reason that he left was because he needed to make more money to support my grandma's family, to put them through school. Because my grandparents got married when I think my uti was, I want to say like 21, like 19, 20, or 21, around that age. I think she was 19, and then she had my aunt at 21. He managed to do that whilst also building a durian farm, and he was successful, not just in wealth but also successful in taking care of the people around him. And then we have my mom, who is my grandma from my dad's side, and she went to law school in the 1950s as a woman in a newly independent Indonesia. And you know, she had a bachelor's degree at a time when it wasn't even common for girls to even go to school, let alone finish high school. Like, that woman is the genuine definition of the GOAT. Like, I don't know how else to say it, but she is the GOAT. Like, I love her. And on the flip side, I have my uti, who is my grandma from my mom's side. And she didn't have the opportunity to actually pursue a higher education. And as I said, she got married at 19 and I think had her first child, like my aunt, when she was like 21 or something, like very young. But she somehow managed to speak so many languages. You know, she spoke English, obviously, fluently, I might add, which was rare. Like, she didn't have an accent, and I was like, how do you not have an accent? Like, I was like, what? But she didn't have an accent, and she spoke English, obviously, Indonesian. She spoke Dutch to my sister as well, and she spoke so many, you know, regional languages like Sundanese, Javanese, you know, all that kind of stuff. That's insane to me. It made me realize that greatness doesn't always look like titles or accolades. Sometimes it looks like adaptability or resilience. Adaptability in ways that aren't always recognized. And to finish off, for my oppa, who is my grandpa from my dad's side, I never got to meet him because he passed 15 years before I was born. So I never really got to meet him, but he took law just like my grandma, and that's actually how they met. And he was actually her like after school tutor, which I find very, very cute. And he was the only child in a very modest Minang family. You know, he found his way and actually managed to become a mayor in West Sumatra. And when you grow up with stories like that, it's so hard to not compare. Because on one hand, I feel so proud. Like, they're my inspiration. And I feel so lucky to come from people like that. But on the other hand, I measure myself against them. And what's funny is, they've never asked me to do that. Sometimes it makes me question where I stand. Like, am I doing enough? Or am I working hard enough? Am I living up to their legacy? And earlier this year, I actually had a moment where it hit me really, really hard, and I didn't expect it. And looking back now, I think it's a bit silly, but back then, or like early this year, it really made me feel so vulnerable. I literally look sunburnt. So I compared myself at 25 to where my dad is at 62, and I genuinely spiraled. Logically, I knew that it didn't make sense. We're at completely different stages of life, but emotionally it felt real. And after some tears and voice notes to my friends, I had to remind myself, and I kind of had to anchor myself back in reality with the fact that we're not even on the same page. We're reading completely different books. And even the people around my dad and the people that I grew up with, the people that he's connected to or introduced me to, I grew up seeing them as larger than life figures, and I wanted to be like them too. But I've recently started asking myself, am I inspired by them, or am I measuring myself against them? I actually also think environment plays a huge role in this, because living in Melbourne, I feel like the pace of life is a lot more forgiving. People value balance more, and there's less urgency to constantly prove yourself. But whenever I go home, and I do so once a year in Jakarta, it embodies a completely different energy, especially if you're in certain circles, because I feel like there's this culture of visibility, of showing where you are in life and what you have, what you've achieved, the people you know. And sometimes it turns to comparison. Like, you're made to compete even if you didn't sign up for the race. And even if you try to opt out, you'll still feel it. And I'll be honest, it does get really tiring, because there's this inner feeling to always feel like you need to be improving or to be exceptional. And there's no room or space to feel like you're just allowed to exist. Because when you achieve something, there's always this voice that goes, okay, what's next? And it feels like you're chasing a version of yourself that doesn't fully exist yet. For example, I was confiding in my therapist once about the feeling of not improving or regressing in life and how my upbringing shaped that. And no shade to my parents, but she brought up the fact that there's an analogy that basically says that I grew up constantly moving the goalpost. Like, my parents were okay when one thing's achieved, but there's always this feeling of, okay, what's the next one? And it never really encouraged me to sit in stillness. And it eventually dawned on me that the aftermath or the result of that mindset was the reason why I felt these feelings of regression or not moving fast enough, because it stems from the fact that my awareness is faster than my stability. Which made me realize that when you keep chasing a version of yourself, or when a version of yourself keeps changing, you never really give it time to actually have it arrive and settle. So you just keep chasing. And the complicated thing is, I don't want to give up on being great. I still have ambition, I still have dreams, and I still want to build something meaningful. But at the same time, I also want peace. I want to feel okay with myself, even if I'm not where I want to be yet. And I want to feel like I'm allowed to exist without constantly proving my worth. And I don't think that these two things are mutually exclusive, but I do think that we're taught to prioritize one over the other. We're taught to choose greatness or to chase it, even if it costs us our peace. And I'm starting to question that. And I think what I'm starting to realize is that maybe greatness doesn't have to look the same for everyone. For my grandparents, greatness looked like sacrifice, resilience, and building something from nothing. And that's incredible. And I'm proud to have grandparents who did that. But maybe for me, greatness also includes emotional awareness, self-understanding, and being able to take care of myself. Being able to live a life that actually feels good, not just impressive. Because ultimately, what's the point of building a life that looks impressive if it doesn't feel like yours? My ancestors sacrificed so much, whether that be my parents or my grandparents and those that came before them. I'm eternally grateful for their sacrifices, but I don't want their sacrifices to be in vain, because their sacrifices have resulted in me having a choice now. And that choice is the luxury of living in the moment rather than thinking about survival. I'm definitely still learning how to hold both things at once. You know, the desire to be great and the desire to be at peace with who I already am. And maybe that's the real work of not choosing one or the other, but learning to exist somewhere in between. I think I'm learning that I don't need to earn my worth through achievement, because I already have it. Like, I'm safe, I'm at home, I've kept myself alive for this long, and I'm not meant to have it all figured out, because like realistically I'm 25. Like, my frontal lobe only fully developed 4 months ago, and mainly because I don't want to spend my whole life chasing greatness and forgetting to live it. So that's it for today's video. I hope you've resonated with it or have taken something away from it, but if not, I appreciate you spending your time with me anyway. Just like every outro I have, I always say that if you've ever felt this way, just know that you're not alone. And this has been very vulnerable because I didn't expect to want to talk about my fears and pressures, but I think it's something that a lot of people, I think most people, you know, not to put like a stamp on everyone, but it's something that all of us experience internally, and we don't really verbalize it because it can be seen as weakness. But just know that it's a very normal thing to happen, and I'm just grateful to have all these revelations and to have all these experiences, you know, even though I feel like I've experienced enough pain to last maybe about 4 generations. But I'm grateful that I get to experience this now, so that when I get older, time has helped me heal or come to terms with a lot of it. So yes, so I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for tuning in. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, hype. I don't know what hype is, but people have been talking about it, so I guess hype. So I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you soon.